guess we can get started with introductions. So hello everyone, I'm Chrissy Galli and from UC Berkeley. I am the Staff Development and Student Experience Specialist, and on the call with me today I have two awesome co-facilitators.
Hi everyone, my name is Chett Miller. I'm the Training and Development Coordinator from UCLA.
Hi everyone, my name is Verdi. I'm the Coordinator of Student Personnel at the University of Maryland, College Park.
So super exciting. We're excited to get going with you today. So
before we get started on some of the content that we're going to be sharing with you today, we wanted to just give some general reminders for the session here. So just so you know, this session and the chat transcript will be recorded and posted on the NIRSA website. Let's say we kind of go over something that really piques your interest and that you really want to explore further. You will be able to access that via the NIRSA website. Please make sure you're muted. We will have some opportunities for you to kind of share outwardly with the group. And we'll kind of let you know when that's happening, but just in the interest of kind of keeping this fluid and keeping this flowing for us as presenters, if you could just keep yourselves muted for now. We encourage you to use that chat box to ask questions and have dialogue with others. Again, we want this to be kind of a fluid conversation that's happening. You might bring up a really great point for us to address kind of right here on the fly. So we highly, highly, highly encourage you to use that chat feature. Hopefully you're familiar with Zoom at this point, so we definitely encourage you to also raise your hand and use that feature there as well. And then continue to share resources on NIRSA Connect. I know that's something that we're kind of part of a larger group that's been looking to do that, and we'll continue to be doing that as well. And then some guidelines for participation. Respect for diversity or perspective from others. It's really good to hear those different perspectives, and it's going to help to give you more of a full circle kind of understanding of this topic and of a lot of other different topics. All ideas are welcome. We don't claim to be the sole experts or the gatekeepers of this topic. We're just here to kind of facilitate this dialogue and facilitate this conversation. And again, this is an informal conversation around student development, learning, and assessment.
yeah, and then just a reminder, so student staff training development is like not a one-size-fits-all approach. So, we recognize that there are people from smaller institutions, larger institutions, those with larger staffs and those with smaller staffs. And so we definitely want to just make sure that you all know that, while we're having these conversations, Luke, Chett, and I directly oversee staff training and development for our departments. We do recognize that there are people, this is a percentage of their overall capacity, and we definitely are open to any and all ideas and contributions. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing for a quick moment, and then I'm going to hop us into a quick activity so we can kind of understand where we're all at in our process. So, one moment. One moment, apologies, y'all. Quick pivot. Okay, and we're back. So, sorry, y'all. One quick moment. So this is one of those ongoing tech failures as you're learning to better Zoom. Okay, hold on. Okay, there we go. We're back and we're ready. Okay, so can y'all see my screen? Yes, no, Luke, thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, so if y'all could go now to MendteMeter.com and use the code 968050. If you have not ever used MendteMeter, I highly recommend looking into it. It's one of my new favorite technologies for staff training and development, or even staff engagement. So it's interactive. It's an interactive software that you can create interactive slide decks. So again, you can use your phone, your laptop, your computer, your tablet. So I see 30 of 7, 41 of y'all. Perfect. So some yeses. So we'll definitely be tapping into those of you who have already opened your resumed in-person operations today. So we'll definitely look to y'all to share some insight and some ideas if you feel comfortable. And then we'll just wait a few more seconds if you want to contribute. Okay, great. So then, oh wow, 100 of y'all, this is so exciting. Okay, then the $1 million question, how are y'all going to train your student staff on new procedures? And the virtual is like if you're going to do virtual only, hybrid, if you're going to do in person and virtual. We'll definitely get more into this later in the call. No hybrids. How interesting. Oh, they're all hybrids. No in person. Oh, one. Okay. I don't know if you just said that because I called it out, but I appreciate you. That's the instance or the reason. Okay. So exciting. Okay, we'll just do another 10 seconds. Okay, perfect. Well, thank y'all for that. So we're gonna now move into the next portion, which is the question of what do you want to get out of this? So Chett or Luke, if you'd be willing to kind of facilitate maybe calling out some things that you're seeing in the chat, just because I can't necessarily see what's in the chat while I'm screen sharing, or yeah.
Sure.
Great. So yeah, just if y'all want to just throw into the chat perhaps what you're looking to get out of today's call. We definitely have some pre-existing kind of topics that we're looking to chat through, but certainly super open to adapting accordingly as well.
So we have some ideas for engagement during training. Staff engagement seems to be common. Tools to facilitate virtual training. Yep, more tools. So see how other people are using the different tools that are out there. Topics that people are choosing to cover. Length of trainings, how to build staff community virtually. Seeing who's already opened, the challenges you've had to overcome, approaches you've taken to those, priorities for trainings,
Definitely.
Engagement during the trainings. So perfect.
Okay. So certainly keep on adding to that list, and we will keep watching. So then, Chett, go ahead.
So this is what this is not going to be, and we want to try to remove. We want to focus specifically on how we're approaching training and development in practice and in theory, not so much the specific HR policies, because those aren't things we really have that much control over. And it's also not a prescriptive guide to how student staff training needs to look, right? We all have different needs for our students that we're trying to accommodate, different populations, different sizes, as was mentioned before. So just be mindful of that. I think we also have different backgrounds where some of us come specifically from student affairs, or if you're like me, I have no official training in student affairs or student development theory. I come from a sport management background. So let's just be mindful of all of our approaches, because I think that diversity of ideas would give us a lot of neat and useful opportunities. Okay, and so what we wanted to talk about, we had three kind of general areas and more specifics once we get into each one, but how are we repurposing student employment roles? How are we determining who amongst our students wants to come back, and how we're making sure we're preparing them? And then how do we use the different technology pieces that are out there to best help us in that? So we'll jump in with the first topic. Again, if you want to contribute, you can raise your hand, put something in chat, and we'll start right at the top. So when we're looking at the repurposing of student employment roles, The first general question we thought might be worthwhile is, how is your department kind of going around making those staffing decisions, right? Are you expecting full-time staff to help with some of the student roles? That's something that I've heard mentioned, at least at UCLA, but we haven't really gone through that much. So it's like, maybe a few of us are spending some time at a front desk or something like that. And how are you preparing and communicating for this to both your student staff, but also your professional staff, to make sure we're all on the same page? So feel free, if you have anything, we can try to see the hands being raised, or if you want to throw it in chat. Not seeing anyone raising hands. Guess I'm just missing it. I don't actually know if I have the ability to see that because I'm not a host of the call.
And then feel free to also, if you want to unmute yourself, if it's easier for you versus chatting in, or even if that maybe rose some other questions for you, perhaps, or you're thinking like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Maybe some of the other schools who have resumed operations perhaps could chime in with kind of how y'all have begun staffing.
So some of the things that are coming in on the chat real quick. Full-time staff have assigned shifts to be of support to students in terms of cleaning and working with patrons. I think that's something I would love to hear how other people are approaching it. I know one of the conversations we've had is who's in charge of talking to the patrons, especially about following new policies and procedures, and if that's something we want our student staff to do. So I don't know if any of the returners, people have already returned, or if anyone has any thoughts specifically about that. Okay. All right, well, we're getting a lot of good comments in the chat. So I'll read out a few other of those. Full-time staff have been assigned to a professional on duty. Jared, can I call you out and ask a little bit more about what professional on duty means and what those roles and responsibilities are and how that goes about supporting your students?
Sure thing. So, sorry, everybody, this is Jared McCauley at Texas Tech University. We opened our facility 2 weeks ago. We're on start of week 3. And so some of our professional staff, our assistant directors and coordinators, have been assigned a professional on duty role. Basically what it used to be is a center manager. We've moved some of our center managers more to the front to help deal with our reservation system, as well as our check-in and talking to a lot of our patrons. So basically they're there to help with anything that's needed, but one of their major roles is when a shift change occurs, they're helping with our safety protocol for our staff. So they're there to take everybody's temperature and to help fill out the survey that they have to fill out, with all the COVID questions. If you have a cough, have you been around anyone who's been, that the classic scenario that a lot of businesses have to use. So that's one of the roles they play, but they're also there as a support role. And I guess maybe if, I don't know if Joanna Valencia is on this, but she's actually, I think, played in one of those roles. I haven't had to do it, so I'm not sure exactly everything they do, but that's kind of where we're going at this time. I don't know if it'll continue in the fall.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I'm going to pick on one other person. Andrew Reddish, you said that you're planning to have students, staff cross-trained to help fill the gaps. How are you going about communicating that to make sure it's an equitable process? I know that's a conversation that I've had with some colleagues, colleagues at UCLA, but also at other schools.
Good question, Chett. What do you mean equitable process?
Just to make sure that students who are looking for opportunities to work, who already work with you, are getting those opportunities first, and or are you kind of just saying apply to these jobs, or like what's the process behind when you the cross training? Like, are you identifying specific students? Are you just kind of opening it up to anyone who's interested?
Yeah, my name is Andrew Reddish. I work at Sacramento State, and at our rec center we have 200 part-time employees roughly. And at any given time. And this spring we had 50 graduate. So we literally lost a quarter of our staff. and everything moved virtual like everybody else, there's going to be some students that might say, I'm not coming back to Sacramento. So what was once 200 dropped to 150, now maybe 100, we just don't know. And so we're reaching out to our staff initially to gauge, would you be interested in working in another department? So for example, you were hired on as an intramural sports referee. Would you want to work at the equipment desk, just as an example? So right now we're in the phase of just gathering who would be interested, who's returning. Once we build that list, then we can look at, because we're still putting together our reopening plans. Right now we're shooting for like an August reopen if we can, early August. And then it's like, what kind of capacity are we going to be at? What are our needs? What pool of employees do we still have to pull from? And then from there, we'll look at specific department needs and start to reach out to some of those students with some opportunities for them to cross-train in other areas.
Okay, thank you. Okay, cool. Is there anything else anyone wants to add on that? For any of the schools that have already reopened, did you cross-train some of your students?
Chett, this is Andrew. I can jump back in.
Sure.
So we also have a unique scenario that I had not encountered before coming to Sac State. We allow students who graduate, we allow them to work 90 days post-graduation for us. So we have students who could still be eligible to work their 90. We are pursuing an opportunity maybe as like a casual employee to give them a 120-day appointment. But we are giving priority, similar to or tracing back to the question you asked, Chett, like we're giving priority to the non-graduating students that are returning first, kind of the first crack, and then we might dip into that pool of students who have graduated to pursue either their 90 or 120-day appointments.
Excellent. And then I see Crystal asked a question with having issues when there's one staff that doesn't really need the help, and that's the staff that, you know, is most likely to be the most open. So how are you handling if you have too many people asking? Does anyone run into that where, you know, you have 10 positions but 20 students? How do you decide which of those 10 get to come back? Anyone got any thoughts on that? It's a tough question. I think at least we're trying to figure that out right now because we don't have a good answer yet either. The last kind of question we wanted to look at least when we're talking about this, is how are you going about communicating your students? And I know Luke's going to talk a little bit more about the survey specifically, but I know our students are Zoomed out and don't want emails because they feel completely overwhelmed. I know some of ours are using, you know, just text messaging and group meets, but I wasn't sure if anyone else had any unique ways of trying to engage some of their students as, you know, to try to drum up interest to come back and things like that. So anyone
I can share at UC Berkeley. So our aquatic staff, professional staff members have become pretty innovative in how they're communicating with their staff. So I think they have traditional forms of communication like text and email, but they've also opened a Slack channel, and they've been kind of doing different types of communication through Slack. So I think Slack provides that area for formal conversation, but then also kind of more casual conversation. So they've been just trying to showcase some like humor and things like that through this time as well. So I think that's one thing that I've seen that we've done that I've been kind of I've been impressed with in terms of just identifying new technology avenues.
Awesome. I see some good comments in the chat on that. So those are the two main areas of here. If we want to move on to the next topic, if you want to keep on posting about those, please feel free to.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about this kind of intent to return survey and assessment. So at the University of Maryland College Park, I'm working with our Assistant Director for Risk Management and then our Assistant Director of Human Resources and Student Development. And we're leading kind of this 6-step approach is what we landed on. The 6th and final step being kind of sharing outwardly what we heard virtually, and then what we kind of recorded through different stages of assessment. So one of the first stages of assessment that we did was kind of a primer that we use for our professional staff who oversee student employees, basically just asking, what training topics do you believe are going to be most impactful for the success of our students when we have our eventual return to operations? And just to kind of preface this conversation, we have not yet returned to operations. So from there, we're kind of coding that data, thematizing that data, organizing kind of what we're hearing from professional staff from all different areas. We have about 25 professional staff that oversee student employees at Maryland. And then from there, I thought, it's great that we're asking our professional staff these things, especially with this diversity of perspectives that we talked about before. But what's probably going to be most impactful for us is to really hear from the people that are going to be most impacted by these trainings, right? We all know as managers and as administrators, we're probably not going to face the same questions, critiques, and ultimately problems that a lot of our frontline, our student employees are going to be facing. So what better way than to kind of figure out what's going to be setting them up for success than actually asking them directly, right? So that's the step that we're currently kind of compiling. And my attitude as we kind of embark on this part of the assessment is I don't expect to get a 100% response rate, but if I can report on some trends and see how those trends do or do not connect to with what we're hearing from professional staff, that's going to be really important for me as we kind of inform our final decisions, right? So one of the first things that I want to know from our students is what's going to set you up for success when we return. Sometimes that's not necessarily going to be a training. Sometimes it is going to be a training. Basically anything that's going to let them feel as though they're going to be able to make that kind of successful return to operations. Because we know that there's going to be a lot of moving parts happening both within our organization and then outside, a lot of external factors as well for those students, which ultimately segues into what trainings are going to make them feel confident and comfortable upon their return. Is it going to be de-escalation training? Is it going to be understanding kind of, the potential for new layouts and procedures? Is it going to be understanding how to kind of mitigate conflict when it comes to patrons? Is it going to be, what do I do if I'm not feeling well and I'm not really sure kind of how to go about those next steps, right? So we want to know the full kind of spectrum of what we're looking to deal with. We know that there's going to be a lot of different areas. We're sure that there's going to be a lot of different points of interest, but as long as we can kind of compile that, we can start to formulate questions that we're going to need to answer. Right. And then at that point, we also want to consider that a lot of our students might need ongoing support like never before. I'm sure a lot of you all in your respective roles have had students both within your area and not probably coming into your office at various points of the semester just saying, hey, right now is just a lot for me. I need support, or I need to vent, or I need kind of a space to just be authentic and kind of vulnerable. Right. And so it's well and good that we kind of put that on supervisors to be that resource for their staff. But here at Maryland, we have 988 student employees. Some areas have upwards of 100+ students kind of under one manager, right? So the more we can build maybe a structured program where students have additional people, someone like myself, someone like our assistant director for risk management, someone like our assistant director of human resources, to kind of step in and be not the sole resource, but another resource for those students to go to. We know that we can kind of best support them as they're navigating this kind of uncertain and challenging time. And let's see, I'm just going to go through and read some of the questions that are kind of happening here. So what tool are you using to send out this survey? Thankfully, through the University of Maryland, we have a license with Qualtrics. So that usually does a lot of the back end kind of data work for me. So we'll be using that. We'll be very intentional in front loading the message as saying, this is not something where we have a definitive date, or we're not going to be solely focused around what that actual return to operations is, but this is more so preparation in advance of that eventual kind of return to date. Yes, Andrew, Qualtrics for everything, definitely. Let's see, so Matthew said, don't have a lot of data on results yet. We've had our director send video messages to students. Yeah, so kind of as Chett alluded to before, engagement's a really big piece, and that's something that, I'm sure all of us at our respective institutions have kind of struggled with. That's something that, again, we've kind of struggled with here in Maryland. And so that's why, at least for me, as it pertains to this kind of understanding of topic areas that we need to address and questions that we need to be considering, I want to document more so trends than making sure that every specific person has kind of responded to this inquiry. And so part of the way that we're doing that also is just giving different channels for them to respond to. So again, we have this intent to return survey. We're going to report a lot of those trends and data back out to our professional staff as well as our students. We're going to come back together, that kind of core group of 3 of us in Maryland, and start to kind of create these playbooks for trainings and for topic areas that we're going to address. And then we're going to share that outwardly and invite feedback and wonder, you know, on the part of both professional staff and students, are we achieving success to make them comfortable and to make you feel comfortable, or are we missing the mark on success and making you feel comfortable? So we're going to give a couple different opportunities for people to weigh in so that way they can, again, kind of just give us feedback and give us, you know, further direction as we embark on this process.
Okay. So there's one question that just came in. Will anyone do some type of beginning of the year all staff training virtually? So that's a perfect segue. Thank you, Leslie. So the next item is looking at training considerations in technology. So the question is, you know, how to simulate in-person training, an in-person training experience virtually. So for us, at UC Berkeley, we haven't yet started really navigating that kind of topic. Our first and foremost kind of priority is looking at resumption of operations and making sure that all of our policies, procedures are in place. But it is something that, you know, with my role, we are thinking about. So looking at in-person experience virtually. So something that we did is we moved our new employee orientation to a virtual space. So we're not currently facilitating the new employee orientations, but we are in a place where we decided early on, it was already kind of something that we were looking to do before the shelter in place began here in California. But we decided to move to a virtual space. So we're utilizing MendteMeter, which you all saw at the beginning of the call. We're also utilizing Zoom. But the question being, you know, how are you simulating that in-person training experience, right? I think what we're looking at then is, you know, how are you simulating the energy that comes into the room when people are coming into trainings? How are you simulating for conflict resolution, those conflicts, and how can, you know, if you're not picking up the energy of the people, I think that's a big part of the training. You know, how are you simulating? So I'm looking through the chat, and it looks like, so Andrew Reddish from Sac State, they will be hosting an annual all staff training virtually. Andrew, would love to hear if you'd be willing to kind of share how y'all are planning for that, or if it's too early for that, just some general initial thoughts of how y'all will approach that.
Hey, Chrissy.
Hey.
We have a planning committee where we start meeting in the spring, prepping for August. We have a big supervisor retreat where we train just our supervisors. And then we have an all staff training where it's typically 4 hours in length, and we do it on a Sunday evening. We shut the rec center down. Everybody gets together. It's kind of our one time a year where everybody's under the same roof at the same time. So obviously we can't do that now. So we're going to do a big Zoom sesh. We're going to have a nice introduction, maybe share a quote or a clip. We've done similar things like that in person to just kind of set the tone, share a common theme for what folks can expect for the training. And then we'll do a virtual team building. We'll utilize the breakout rooms in Zoom. We'll have a full-time staff member in each of the breakout rooms that can kind of be a facilitator. But it also pays dividends that student or part-time staff are getting to know full-time staff on our rec center crew. From there, we'll go into 3 educational sessions, 3 or 4 educational sessions that range from 30 minutes to an hour in length. We are going to have sessions on our new normal, so just new policies, protocol, what student, staff, and part-time employees can expect. We'll have a session on resilience, specifically with financial wellness. So we're going to have a guest speaker from our financial wellness department on campus talk to our staff about how they can be more savvy, be more responsible in these challenging times with their personal finances. We will have a session on first aid, CPR, AED during COVID. And I think we are looking at having a fourth session, but it's kind of just a filler session if need be, because right now we're going to be expanding on our rec center during all of this. And so we might have a small session on what does expansion look like during all this craziness. So.
Awesome. Well, gosh, thank you so much for continually sharing with us your insight and what y'all are doing. I love that idea about the financial wellness. I think for us, we're always looking at ways that we can support our students in their everyday lives, as well as the work that they're doing with us, because we realize that there is so much of their life that happens outside of our rec center. And especially at UC Berkeley, and I imagine all of our institutions, our students are under so much stress and pressure. So looking to identify ways to support them in other ways as well. So I love that idea of financial wellness. I'll probably be reaching out to you. But so that, I see some kind of chats going in, or some ideas in the chat. So there's some good conversation about best ways to check for understanding that isn't just simple multiple choice questions. Yeah, definitely is always a struggle. I know for us, I know some of our staff have started using MendteMeter, which allows for not only polling open-ended questions. For our new employee orientation, we're going to be using Google Forms to kind of assess that. So there's the quantitative kind of ABCD, but then also the long form answers as well, to make sure that our student employees, when they're getting onboarded or oriented, they're not just kind of putting us on mute when the training starts or the new employee orientation starts. So to make sure that they were kind of paying attention during that, because I know it's easy to just press mute and kind of zone out. So something that I was thinking about, and I don't know, is anyone adjusting desired learning outcomes accordingly? Do the learning outcomes change if you move into a virtual space? So kind of speaking to understanding if people or if the staff are learning during that, or if they are kind of taking away from the session what you intended for them to learn. So then, anyone have any ideas on that? If y'all have started thinking about adjusting learning outcomes, or if you need to add to the existing learning outcomes that you have for your trainings?
Hey, Chrissy, it's Chett again. For us at UCLA, we're being very, we're actually making the training shorter. I think it's a common thing to say, here's everything we have to cover all at once. And that's kind of been our approach before. Like our orientation was 2 hours, but now it's just breaking it out and saying, here's 15-minute little increments so we can be really targeted. And we were lucky enough to be able to purchase a software to help us do that. It's called Articulate. I think I talked a little bit to Chrissy about like what it is, but it lets you build online training modules that you can then load into an LMS. So I have been desperately trying to learn how to use that because it is a little more complicated than I thought, but hopefully once we get that running, it also helps guide discussion if it's, not like a mediated type of thing where they can't advance. We've all been in those trainings where you can't advance until you actually go through and read everything or watch everything. It lets you put in those kinds of restrictions to hopefully help with some of the retainment of information.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I know. I'm always looking and interested. So there's the Canvas option, and then there's different partnerships that you can make with different departments that have content building software. But yeah, so for those of you who are going to be utilizing Canvas, are there any kind of best practices that y'all have found in engaging with Canvas? Trainings that you think would be beneficial for those others who are looking to maybe look into using Canvas, or some of you who are maybe already pros in Canvas. Would love to hear if y'all have any words of wisdom or kind of thoughts that have been particularly helpful. I know I haven't used Canvas yet, but it is an option, I think, through UC Berkeley. So we're definitely looking into that as well. Has anyone run into any pinch points with Canvas, any frustrations, any things that maybe we would be interested in learning about? Okay, Jillian said we created shells for each of our department areas so we could just push out info to all students and just individual areas as well. Great. And then something that was, oh, okay. Captivate. Okay, Chris Geary from Indiana is saying Captivate also provides a fair amount of flexibility. Drag and drop. Awesome. So, oh, Leslie. It's like everyone's using some really cool technology. I'm really excited. This was kind of one of my selfish interests in co-hosting this roundtable, is to start learning a little bit more about different technology opportunities. So something that I wanted to talk about also is, you know, it seems like there's this balance for things that can be trained for online, but, you know, like we all kind of identified earlier in the call, that we're looking to go to a hybrid model. So it's, you know, I guess wondering, you know, what can be trained for online, and then at what point do you need to be in person? So I think I was talking with someone the other day, and we were talking about, you know, you can train someone on how to use the laundry machines up to a, and that at some point you have to come in and actually use the laundry machine to understand it fully. So I'm wondering if y'all have, you know, kind of started thinking through, as you're building your online trainings and things like that, at what point do you move to the in-person, and how do you cadence that? So we'd love if anyone would be willing to either share into the chat or unmute and share kind of how y'all have kind of balanced that process.
Hey, Chrissy. So here in Maryland, what I did as part of that primer that I sent to our professional staff that oversees students, when I asked them what topics they felt would be most helpful for students as we return to operations, I also asked them to designate what could happen prior to opening and what needed to happen during opening and in person. So kind of putting the onus on them to see, you know, what may make the most sense with that in-person experience versus not.
Awesome, thanks, Luke. Anyone else want to share?
Hi, so this is Jillian from Xavier University. I've been taking the lead on our team in creating our Canvas course for our employees. So we have the overarching recreational sports that all of our employees are now part of, and then each department area has their own shell. So what we are doing is any documents that they need to read within the documents, we have added a specific number of questions that weren't in there before. So they can't just skim through it. They're kind of hard to find. So that kind of holds them more accountable for reading it. Once we are able to get back into our facility, the professional staff are also going to film ourselves doing specific tasks that we want them to watch. If we are changing the way that we are cleaning a certain item, we're going to demonstrate that way as well. And then any presentations that they would normally watch, we'll do the presentation via Zoom or Canva or however, where we record it and upload it. And then all of our checkpoints to make sure that they paid attention during their training will be done either through the length of time that we see them on a unit within their module, and in person we will be doing our check-ins that way too. So if it's clear that they didn't do a training, then they're not going to be scheduled, and we've decided as a professional staff that we'll pick up the slack of the hours if we don't want somebody on the schedule. We are in a fortunate position where we have already done our hiring, so we don't have any new students. So our training is just going to be all the changes due to COVID, but it's not a lot of new items. So that's going to be really helpful. But I think Canvas is going to work really well for the hybrid.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Sorry I didn't see you had your hand up. I can't see the participants, but certainly if anyone else has their hand up and is waiting to share, go ahead and unmute yourself, and we can definitely would love to hear your thoughts as well. Now, this may be a silly question, and it may be, I don't know how relevant it is, but, you know, has anyone been utilizing Connect2 for any of this conversation around training and technology? And if anyone has, if you're open to sharing, or if that's, because I know I was talking at one point with someone, and it seemed like there could be some kind of capabilities for training or tracking trainings in Connect2. Okay. So then I think we kind of talked about this earlier, but how you're training for new skills. So repurposing employees in other units, say for those lifeguards who are now going to become facility staff members or fit staff, weight room monitors who are going to become, you know, facility staff members. You know, how do you approach that, and you know, how do you kind of balance all of that? Okay. And then we talked a lot about LMS platforms, other technology being utilized. So I've seen through the chat. So Aaron Brooks just mentioned. Oh, sorry. Does anyone want to chat? Want to unmute themselves? No. Okay. So Brightspace, I've never heard of that. Matthew at Ohio State, Cornerstone on Demand. Seems like maybe not the most user friendly. But then Kim, sorry if I just completely mispronounced that. Captivate. So anyone who's using these, so Chris Geary, Matthew, Aaron Brooks, anyone else who's chatted in with their kind of technology that maybe we're not all as aware of, do any of you want to kind of provide a testimonial to either how amazing it is, or you know, kind of great things you've seen about it? Maybe bring your chat to life.
Captivate, this is Chris Geary from Indiana University. Captivate's kind of nice because it's structured like in the PowerPoint language. So you build slides, but then you can build in all different kinds of interactivity. We're fortunate in that we have an instructional systems technology degree in the School of Education. And so I've been like super blessed to be able to get some amazing grad students that I can work with. I have one that only works 10 hours a week. So we really focus her on kind of production. And I have other people that are running around trying to get content matter expert information and all of that. But I have built stuff in it before. It's very similar to kind of all those video-based things where you have your slide and then underneath you have your audio track, and then you have your transition tracks, and then you can manipulate those by just moving them along the timeline. You have multiple options for output. The nice thing is if you do straight video, then you have to have a videographer that can go in and make those changes for you if someone's name changes or whatever that is. With Captivate, you could go in and make that change yourself once you get a hang of it. I mean, any of that stuff that has any sophistication is going to just have a learning curve. But if you like technology and you can learn from watching videos and stuff, then I think it's accessible probably to most people.
Awesome, thank you. So Jonathan Johnston, I saw you asked a question about virtual onboarding and introductory trainings for staff. Do you want to maybe just expand on that question just so we can best answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm just asking who have all moved to more virtual onboardings, really more or less before we even got to COVID. So you're already been doing it for the past couple of years versus the result of COVID having for us to migrate towards more virtual trainings, but also it challenges the norm for us to even consider moving forward. So I was just asking more so how many of us have already done previously before COVID. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, it looks like, oh, someone else want to share? So it looks like Matthew from Ohio State, they've done a department level virtual onboarding for several years. So Matthew, do you want to speak a little bit to that process?
Yeah, sure. So Matthew from Ohio State University, we have used really actually Canvas in the past, but now we're transitioning over to Cornerstone on Demand to have a single long video that will be our onboarding. It's about 30 minutes. It includes voices from our unit level to our division level. And it just generally talks about the policies, procedures, kind of an understanding, introduction to staff, our values, things like that. So when students are hired, they're expected to take or watch that video within the first 2 weeks of their employment. They take a short check for understanding, and then they will probably usually before that time are onboarded to their specific staff and on the job duties. So this is just kind of a higher level thing so that we can bring some unity and culture into our student staff as well.
Awesome, thank you. And then Aaron Brooks, don't know if you want to speak to, you kind of did onboarding for your specific staff pre-COVID? Or
Hi,
oh,
everyone. So my name is Aaron Brooks. I'm from the University of Akron. And before COVID, we had our own, like just for our intramural sports staff, we did our training online. I just created something online, emailed it to them, and then there was basically a Google form that they needed to fill out post just to make sure that I knew they'd actually watched everything and learned what they needed to know. We have since post-COVID started all of our department trainings. So we have what's called RecWorks. It's basically hiring presentation that we would normally put on with a group of 50 to 100 students. We have since transitioned that to be completely online and virtual, so that way students can watch it on their own. There's a 5 questionnaire at the end letting us know what program area they're interested in, things like that, so we know they watched it. But everything else now is going online as an introductory and onboarding process for the rest of the department. I hope that helps.
yeah, definitely. That's awesome. Thank you. So one quick thought that I had, and this goes more to, and not necessarily training, but more staff development. For those of you on the call who perhaps use the Iowa Grow method, or a hybrid of Iowa Grow, wondering if you'd be willing to either speak, unmute yourself or into the chat, and this is more for selfish reasons, but how, if you are looking to move that program virtual, how you're looking to do that, how will we continue to do those Grow conversations in the space? So that's something that's been weighing on me for sure is, how do we continue to have these really valuable conversations about Iowa Grow? And those who don't know the Iowa Grow method, it comes out of University of Iowa, and it really focuses on staff training, or it focuses on connecting the students' post-grad careers and academic majors to the work that they're doing within student affairs, but particularly for us within rec sports. So anyway, if you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend looking into that. So questions that have come into the chat. Are you paying, so from Betsy, I so apologize if I just mispronounced your last name. Are you paying your students for virtual training? If yes, flat rate or hourly paid based on how long you think it will take? That's a great question. So I know for us, I can say for our virtual new employee orientation, we're planning for an hour. And so I think we'll just kind of pay them for that hour. We've planned it accordingly where we know it should cadence within about an hour period. And then if it's a little bit less or a little bit more, it'll end within that 15-minute window. So it won't be an issue in terms of that. Greg Durham, thank you. I'll likely be following up with you on how you launched that via Canva. Would love to hear if you are willing to unmute yourself and just kind of, oh, never mind, I'll chat. But if you wanted to share with the group just how you maybe moved to the Canva Grow method real quick. And if not, I'll just follow up with you.
No, yeah, so there was a video and a couple of precursory questions we asked students to reflect on. And because we couldn't get them all in a room together, we launched it on Canva and we put them all into the room. And then when it came to the individual reflection, rather than ask them to fill out an open response question, we wanted to get some face time with them and still do those reflections one-on-one. COVID happened right as we were starting to make that happen, so we didn't get to every individual student, particularly our intramural officials. But those in leadership, we made a commitment to make sure we at least had the conversations with those who put in that significant amount of time. And we're going to come back around to it back in the fall.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Okay, so I'm mindful that we only have a few minutes left. So we actually, I'm going to just move forward quickly. So apologies. Exciting if y'all haven't been on a roundtable with me or Matthew before, or even kind of organically reached out to us. Matthew, Chett, Luke, Liz Feldman, who's also on the call, we all are a part of this Student Staff Development Initiative, which its purpose is really to develop a thriving community for the NIRSA network members to share best practices and resources related to staff training and development for students. as part of that, we have a core work group that kind of just looks at ways to kind of grow the initiative. And one of the things that we've done in this COVID time recently is the Student Return to Work Shared Resources document. So if you've looked in the NIRSA discussion board lately, you've likely seen it. Matthew posted it. But what we decided to do is create a resources folder that goes along with it. So if you just either hover your camera over the QR code or you go to the bit.ly link, it'll take you to a centralized folder where you can see the Student Return to Work Shared Resources document, where it has a few different questions that you can contribute to or pull resources from other schools. But then there's also a resource folder. So we're asking if anyone contributes to the document and there's maybe a supplemental, either like a PowerPoint or a document that would supplement your contribution, we highly recommend that you add to that resource folder. So we wanted to just create space to kind of talk about that Student Return to Work Shared Resources doc. We think it's really valuable during this time. There's so many questions, and a lot of the same topics that we talked about in this roundtable are discussed in that document. And what's really great is that in traditional NIRSA fashion, a lot of the schools have gone in and already started contributing their ideas. So we just wanted to create space to talk about that and encourage y'all to contribute, or even just go in if you don't have the answers yet, and you're looking for some insight or some wisdom. Highly recommend y'all check that out. And then I already talked about the initiative. If you're interested in just learning more about it, or if you'd like to just join the initiative and be on the listserv for announcements and things like that, I highly recommend you reach out to me directly, and I'll get you all set up within that. But yeah, that's kind of the end of our time. If you have any questions, feel free to either chat them in now, or reach out to Luke, Chett, or Luke, Chett, or me. So we highly appreciate your time today. We know that this is really uncertain times, and we're really grateful that you chose to create space and share time with us. So yeah, thank you so much, and we hope you have the best day ever.